support their staff.
Why don't you just say
patients.
enough?
Well,
you should, and just continue what happened in the pandemic.
Yeah, well, because there's other things that we've done for nurses as well. Because you're right, it's not just about pay. There's lots of other ways.
You know that's not fair, don't you?
Well, there's other ways that we can demonstrate.
Yeah, but that's not, on that
gratitude.
point, though, it's not fair, is it? A lot of strikes going on at the moment. You're being very resolute as things stand in standing up to the unions. It's not proving very popular with the public. Again, 3/4 think the unions have got the edge in this at the moment. I want to talk specifically about nurses, mainly because your father was an NHS GP, your mother ran the family pharmacy. You're a person who grew up around the health system, around healthcare. It must burn in your soul. Nurses, we were told to go out and applaud every Thursday in the pandemic. Many of them died in the pandemic, risking their lives to save people's lives. They, to me, should be made an exception, and yet you've barely negotiated with the nursing unions. Do you not feel this duty that you talked about to actually take care of nurses and say, actually, we do have to make some exceptions, and at top of my list, my priority is going to be nurses, and give them a proper pay rise?
You know, you're right, nurses should be an exception, and that's because they do an incredible job for all of us, and they demonstrated that during the pandemic, and I'm really grateful to them for that. And you're right, I grew up in an NHS family, so this does burn deeply inside of me because I know how important great healthcare is for people, and including my own family. And we did treat them as an exception. You know, people forget that actually during COVID, when I was Chancellor, we instituted a public sector pay freeze because actually wages for most people were going down. And what we decided in that context, given everything going on, that there should be a pay freeze across the entire public sector. So everyone working in the public sector didn't see their wages rise during COVID, given the economic situation. But you know what? There was one exception to all of that. It was people working in the NHS.
Yeah, but it
was nurses.
I know, but it's all been completely dwarfed, as you know, by inflation.
But hang on, no, but your principle, though, that
yes.
we should treat is one that I agree with, and it's one that I've actually delivered when I was Chancellor. So I think
are you going to deliver again now you're Prime Minister?
And now when we're talking about this, and I'm really glad actually to have an opportunity to talk about it. Now, look, it's not always easy in this job because I'm focused on doing what I believe is right for the country and in the long term, and often that means doing things that maybe not always popular, and this is a good example of that. But let me explain why we're doing what we're doing and why I think it's important. Look, I would love to give the nurses a massive pay rise. Who wouldn't? Certainly would make my life easier, wouldn't it, right? Of course I would love to do that if I could.
Give them one then.
So why is that tough, right? Why is it tough? It's about choices. So right now, there's a record amount of money going into the NHS. Record amount. And in spite of those difficult decisions that we had to make to stabilise the economy, which were the right decisions, we found more money for the NHS and social care because I believe that was the right thing to do. So right now, the money going to the NHS, biggest it's ever been. But we have to put that in lots of different places. We need to hire more doctors, more nurses. We need more scanning equipment so we can detect cancers early. We need more ambulances, so we're doing all of that.
I understand, but to do that, to recruit people, you've got to make them think there's an environment that's worth working in, that they're going to be actually treated in the way that we treated them in the pandemic with all our applauding. I mean, one specific thing that really got my goat about the nurses is in the pandemic, after a campaign which I led actually, car park charges were removed from all hospitals for nurses. Right, because they were paying up to £1,000 each a year to park their car outside a place they were going in to save lives. It seemed to me preposterous. In Scotland and Wales, they don't have that charge. But now the pandemic's over, that's come back. And they're now facing charges again of £1,000 a year. You can't think that's right. Surely the nurses in England have to pay £1,000 a year for the privilege of parking outside a hospital to save lives.
So actually what we've done is put in place support for trusts to be able to support their staff.
Why don't you just say enough?
Well,
you should, and just continue what happened in the pandemic.
Yeah, well, because there's other things that we've done for nurses as well. Because you're right, it's not just about pay, there's lots of other ways.
You know that's not fair, don't you?
Well, there's other ways that we can demonstrate
but
our
on
gratitude.
that point, though, it's not fair, is it?
Well, look, everyone watching this show will get to work in lots of different ways.
I know.
Right?
I know, but not many are actually going to actually save lives. And they're paying £1,000 on average for the pleasure of parking outside a hospital. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's why we've put measures in place, actually, and more funding to ease the burden of hospital car parking
Actually,
charges, not just on employees, but also on patients who are there on a regular basis.
But actually what's happened is a lot of these trusts have actually put the prices up. They're now paying more, the nursing staff, than they were before the pandemic. Again, I simply say to you, that's not fair, is it? It's not right.
Well, here are some of the other things we're doing, right? Because again, this is all...
Don't change the subject. On that, it's not fair and right, is it?
Well, let me tell you some of the other things we're doing.
I know you don't think it is.
Well, look, of course, would I love it if people had to pay less to get to work? Of course I would, right? And of course I'd love that for everybody.
Why are nurses in Scotland and Wales valued more? Why don't they have to pay to park?
Well, that's not quite fair. That's not
true.
Quite fair. What the nurses were also...
They don't have to pay for parking.
Nurses were also on strike in Wales.
They don't have to pay for parking.
They also pay higher taxes. A typical nurse in Scotland pays higher taxes than they do in England, right?
Will you at least look at that?
Of course I'm happy to look at that, right? Of course
I think you should. I think it's a big deal for a lot of these nurses.
But this is really important. So look, here are some of the other things that we've done, and then I want to get onto the point on pay. But so you're right, because there's lots of other ways we can value people. We've reinstituted nurses' bursaries. So if you're training to be a nurse, £5,000 a year bursary. That's not available for people studying other subjects. That's because we care about nurses in particular. You asked they should be treated differently. They are. That's very generous. Something else the union asked us for a year before last was when nurses qualify, we want to keep supporting them because they want to keep learning new skills so they can help more patients. We said, great, we'll support that. £1,000 of a training budget for every newly qualified
but here's
nurse.
The problem with...
So let's get on to pay though. So I just want to say
here's
that
here's what you're not mentioning in this context, which is raging inflation means that all this stuff has been completely dwarfed.
Yeah.
So you know as well as I do that nurses are actually out of pocket. Despite all this, they're massively out of pocket because of inflation. And I think that if the country is told to go out and applaud these people every Thursday for risking their lives in a pandemic, and our reward is to kick him in the teeth the moment it's over, I don't think it's fair. Welcome back. Well, Tommy Fury will fight Jake Paul in Saudi Arabia later this month. One is a boxer, the other is a YouTuber. So what's it all about?
I'm really excited for this.
That if Tommy loses, he can stay in Saudi Arabia
leave him
for
in
good.
Saudi Arabia.
Leave him for good.
He can become Cristiano Ronaldo's best pal, and he'd become a PT for Ronaldo in Saudi.
Well, Tommy Fury joins me now. You're going to become the Cristiano Ronaldo of boxing in Saudi, apparently, Tommy. No bad thing to be my mate in Saudi, the highest paid athlete in the world at 37.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a reason he's gone out to Saudi, isn't he? But best of luck to Cristiano Ronaldo in his move out there. Hope he plays even better football out there.
Now, look, there's a very interesting debate about these YouTubers turned boxers, about whether they're making a mockery of the great sport of boxing. You're a boxer and always have been. But what do you make of it? I mean, are they at a level now, these Paul brothers, where actually that argument no longer carries water?
I mean, at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's bringing new eyes to boxing, and that's the only positive thing I can say about it, really. Other than that, it is what it is. They're not proper professional boxers, you know. They're just people who's playing at it, you know, doing it to entertain the crowd, earn a few quid, and that's it, really. But when you put one of those in with a professional boxer, well, you're all about to see what's going to happen. But I don't know, it's bringing new eyes to the sport. You know, kids are getting involved that wouldn't normally watch it. So, yeah, it's great.
What if you lose? I mean, Tyson's already made it clear what his reaction will be, which is basically disowning you by the sound of it. But for you to lose to someone who's not even a real boxer, that would be unthinkable, right?
Of course, and that's why that's not an option. There is no way that this man could beat me, even if he had a hammer in both hands.
I've got to say,
there is no way, and I'm going to exhibit that.
Yeah, I've made it 2 rules in life. Never fight anyone called Tyson or Fury. Just seems to me to be an act of self-harm.
Well, soon it's going to be never fight anyone called Tyson and never fight anyone called Tommy, because I'm going to prove that in shortly under 4 weeks.
Out of interest, have you ever had a fight with Tyson?
I've had many fights with Tyson in the gym, yes, but I can't reach his head, so I'll just hit his hips. And that's where I'm online with.
Have you ever knocked each other out?
No, I mean, at the end of the day, if I steal his breakfast, he might hit me with a few good right hands and wobble me up a bit, but that's not happened so far. I'm a bit more wiser than that.
Now, more personally, last time I interviewed Tyson, he was on this show, and he said he was retiring. And I said, I don't believe you. And in fact, if you do come back in the ring professionally, you've got to give me £1 million. Will you take the bet? And he took it live on air and then said on TalkSport he would pay me in pound coins. Can you just tell him I'm still waiting and that every morning I run down to the post office, there's no bag of coins, Tommy?
Well, I'm sorry, Piers, but I hate to say it, I haven't got the stones to go up to her and ask for your £1 million. You're going to have to do that yourself.
I'll ring him. I'm not scared. I'll ring him. What's going to happen in this fight? You think you're going to knock him out?
I know I'm going to knock him out. This fight will not go any more than 4 rounds. The stuff that I'm doing in the gym, the people that I'm handling in the gym, there's no way this goes the distance.
And he apparently went on social media to reveal that you'd become a father without you guys even getting the chance, you and Molly May, your partner, to say it yourself.
Listen, at the end of the day, all Jake Paul can do from, wherever he is in this world is speculate. And that's all that was, speculation. Nothing's ever true unless you hear it from me and Molly.
Well, next, Andrew Tate will spend the next month behind bars in Romania after losing the latest appeal against his detention. Tate and his brother Tristan are being held as part of an investigation into rape and human trafficking. Well, speaking outside court, Andrew Tate said he's done nothing wrong.
You know I'm innocent. There's not much justice in Romania.
Well, the pack is still with me. Plus, joining me now is the lawyer for the Tate brothers, Tina Glandian, who is in Romania. Well, welcome to you, Ms. Glandian. I really appreciate you joining me. Where are we with this case? It seems that every now and again this pops up back on television with them being remanded for further time. How long can that process continue before a charging decision is made?
Under Romanian law, they have up to 180 days, which is in 30-day increments. So every time there's a 30-day detention order, they're allowed to renew their request and have it extended for an additional 30 days, but not to exceed 180 days.
OK, you've taken on this case. Andrew Tate has been repeatedly bellowing his innocence as he's been led in and out of these court hearings and so on. Do you believe them? Do you believe that he and his brother are innocent?
At this point, Piers, they've had this investigation going since April. We're now February, and there are not even charges filed against them. So this is a huge injustice the way we see it. They should not be detained at this point. We think it's now crossed over to the point where it's violating international human rights law, because the deprivation of your liberty pre-trial is the most severe form of punishment a state can impose. And that's what they've done in this case. And they've had a very lengthy investigation with the government's resources. They've been analyzing and looking at all of their devices since April when they seized everything. And here we are, February, and charges aren't filed. So I think there's absolutely no evidence that's been presented. And that's our position.
How are your clients at the moment? How is Andrew Tate dealing with incarceration? I mean, I interviewed him just before Christmas. We had a long, wide-ranging interview.
Yes.
And once again, I was struck by the phenomenal following that he has online, particularly with young men. He has an enormous following there. You and I know this has been whipped up now by that community into a huge framing of a narrative that this is complete injustice. There are others who think this has been a long time coming, that he's a bad human being and that he's going to face very serious charges, and that will be the last we see of him. But how is he faring right now, given that at the moment he's in this limbo land of no charging but being held in incarceration?
The brothers are both very strong, they're resilient, and they're holding up, but obviously the conditions are not good. They're in a Romanian jail cell, and they've been detained for a very lengthy period at this point. They have limited access to their attorneys. It's not a good condition for them.
You've obviously represented a lot of people.
And as far as...
Sorry, please finish.
I was going to say, to your second point, they're controversial public figures, but that's not a crime. And at this point, we have not been provided any proof that they've committed any crimes, nor have they even been charged. So I would ask that people presume them innocent as they are.
Do they feel that they are being tried in the court of public opinion?
I think the public is divided, as you know. I think they have a big following, but at the end of the day, yes, I think there is a lot of information in the public. I think there's a lot of false allegations in the public. I think some evidence has now been put forth. Again, I don't want to comment too much on the facts of the case since there is an ongoing criminal investigation. However, I think there has been evidence put out, videos and other statements for the public to see what the supposed state of the evidence actually is.
It's been interesting to watch Andrew Tate's Twitter feed in particular, that he's continued to tweet. Is he doing that himself? Has he got people doing that for him? And how do you feel from a legal point of view? Is it a wise tactic to continue to do that on social media when you're being held in custody by the Romanian authorities?
Well, again, he doesn't have access, so he's not doing anything directly. And what's being put out is on his accounts. And I'm not going to speak as to, the source of the posts and what's being put out. But I think, again, as of now, he's not charged with anything, and he's free to comment publicly if he wishes to.
There have been various tapes have surfaced in part of media investigations in the last few weeks, including Andrew Tate talking about rape to a woman in a pretty unsavoury manner. So what would your reaction be to that?
First of all, I think the authenticity of anything that is presented through the media as opposed to turned over to the defense needs to be questioned, because material is edited and it's easily manipulated. So first, I would say that. Secondly, I don't think certain text messages, I'm not here to judge or to talk to people's desires or fetishes, but certainly somebody could easily set someone up by saying they have certain fantasies, they want certain things done to them or said to them. And so there's a lot that goes into. You can't take a text message out of context. You first have to know, first of all, the entire context of it and what the background is. There needs to be explanation. So I think you have to keep all of that in mind when you're seeing something in the media.
This is a complicated thing, because at the heart of it, it's really, we don't know, right? We just don't know. All we do know are the facts, is that Andrew befriended this paedophile.
Yes.
Even after he was convicted initially of paedophile behaviour, Andrew continued to see him, including for 4 days in New York, infamously. And we also know he vowed to clear his name and then never did.
Yeah, I mean, my problem is not that he befriended Epstein when he didn't know he was a paedophile, but after he was released from prison, in full knowledge of what he'd done, he then goes to New York to stay with them, and it wasn't for academic legal reasons.
No, he was there for 4 days.
Yeah, he was on a jolly with his
and lots
old
of
pal,
women seen going in.
Epstein.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that is extremely distasteful. We also have the photograph, which is now real.
One of the weirdest things... Well, which
bottom.
photograph?
Well, I mean...
I thought... Look, it looks like the Mail on Sunday have nailed the fact that that photograph may be real. But what about the bathtub one?
I mean, the bathtub...
One of the weirdest things I've ever seen.
It takes it into... It now
have we got it again? Can we get it up on camera?
But it now reminds me of the Duchess of Argyle's
look at this. So
case.
these are friends of the Maxwells, Ghislaine Maxwell, right? Who are pretending to be Andrew and this girl who was his, the woman he's paid millions of dollars to, while saying he never met her, to prove that they couldn't have frolicked in that bathtub. This looks like proof of the complete opposite, Katie.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary photograph and clearly doesn't do anything to clear Andrew's name. I mean, I think at the end of the day, he said he was going to go to court. He'd be prepared to do that, be prepared to be investigated by the FBI. Did none of that. I think it sticks in the core for a lot of people that the settlement was deemed the easy way out. I think Alan made a good point, though, because he was under huge pressure. The Queen wasn't well. She's coming towards the end of her life. The last thing that the royal family would have needed was a big court case like this. They had enough with what was going on with the court of the Sussexes across the pond. But, of course, Charles is now faced with all of this on the eve of his coronation.
Well, the last thing he needs is all this.
I mean, the trouble is, it's always all about Andrew.
It's all about him wanting to make his comeback into public life.
About Harry. You don't start even talking or thinking about this sort of thing until after the coronation.
Right.
Assuming he is innocent, then...
Absolutely,
how can we
assume that?
Well, let's just play devil's advocate.
Let's give him a chance.
Let's give him
Why
the
does any innocent
guilty.
person pay millions and millions of dollars?
Well, let's just say
someone
pressure.
they claim they never met. It wasn't like he met her and there's a dispute.
If he was, it's hypothetical what I'm saying. If he was, it wouldn't really matter whether he was trying to clear his name or not, because the point is that Charles's plan for a streamlined monarchy wasn't going to include Andrew at the helm anyway.
No.
He was going to be demoted. So this is just a distraction.
But what about the coronation?
Is
a great chance for King Charles to reset, the whole monarchy.
Yes.
After 70-odd years of his mother's reign, his glorious reign. This is the big moment for him, where he actually has a coronation and his queen consort coming and gets hers.
Yes, I mean, he must be sitting with his head in his hands, wishing he had rather more amiable relatives.
No, but I would be saying, why on earth would he even countenance having Harry and Meghan there with all their cameras making notes repeating again more private conversations they have
he
with the
has
royals.
to. If he
and
doesn't
why would
have
he
them,
have
then
Andrew
there'll
if
be
he's,
a bigger
if he's
row.
now going to try and be contesting this?
Well,
in court?
I agree, Patrick. I think there will be a bigger row if he doesn't. Their absence
He has
will,
no
will,
choice.
will
I don't
speak
agree. Why would there
volumes.
be a bigger row? Just ban
Because
them.
they would make one.
The best answer to Harry and Meghan is shut up, go away, and nothing to do with us anymore.
Yes, but the
But
press,
Piers, you're missing the point. You're
What's the
missing
point?
the point of a royal family is it has to be united. It projects
They're not
this image
united.
of
You've
unity.
got these two
but
mudslingers in
Katie's
California.
right.
And so
Katie's
Charles,
right.
Why should it be all one way? Why should these two
It shouldn't
renegades
be all one
just
way.
because a king has
shovel
to be,
dirt all over their
because
families'
a king
heads
has to
for
be
months and years on end?
magnanimous. Piers, a king has to
I
be
don't agree.
magnanimous
See,
and show
if
that
one of my kids
forgiveness.
did this, that would,
But
for this
Piers,
long
Piers,
and
can I
this
just say
nastily
something?
about all the loved ones of the family.
Since Queen
they could
Victoria, the
swing for
royal
it.
family is supposed to represent the idealised British family.
Yes.
And they've always been conscious of that. And it's something the taxpayer are conscious of too. They do not like to see a royal family divided. Charles doesn't have any choice.
William wants to punch Harry's lights out, I was told the other day. Literally wants to punch his
He
lights
may
out.
very well, but at the
What
moment,
happens if he sees him at the coronation and decides now's the moment? I mean, the heir to the
won't.
throne punching his brother in the head.
The Abbey will have been
Knocking
cleared.
the-
The Abbey will have
knocking
been
the
cleared of
crown
any
off
dog
his
bowls.
father.
There will be no
All
dog
the
bowls. There will be
cameras
no.
shut off.
Listen,
It's
Piers,
not
that-
If one of your
That's
family,
right.
if one of your family had done this, right? One of your siblings or a child, or if they'd done that, what would you do?
We're private individuals.
You keep it in the private domain.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, Harry hasn't done that.
No,
I think
he's a
his
little
father,
traitor.
I think his father and his brother will show that they can do better.
No, I think honestly they should cut him off. Bang, done, gone. You stay in Montecito, you're not part of this anymore. You don't get the good stuff. You don't get the trinkets from the institution that you've been trashing and burying. This poll in America last week showing massively reduced popularity
I know,
for
I
all
saw
the
it.
royals,
Yep.
but the most unpopular now, Harry and Meghan in America, right? Because they just don't know what they're doing. They're too stupid.
And Charles is riding top of those polls, Piers.
Yeah.
And I think to extend that fight
But they're on a
front
mission. They're on a
is
mission.
the way to behave.
They're on a mission to destroy the monarchy, and we in this country should not
But
accept it.
it's been-
And by the way, it's not just Charles's coronation. It is the people's coronation
Of course
our
it is,
king.
but I
It's a
think,
state
but I
occasion.
Well,
think-
we're paying for it.
But I think the people appreciate Charles acting with dignity. And
I
that
agree.
he's risen above
The
it.
most,
Says so
the
much
most dignified
in his
thing
favour.
he could do is have the least dignified members of his family not there. That's what I call preserving dignity. The idea of Meghan Markle and Harry, after all they've done, sitting there beaming away in the front row, would make me puke.
Well, they won't be in the front pew. I mean, just look back to the Queen's service of Thanksgiving during the Jubilee. They can be there in a peripheral.
Shove them out by the
they can be
crypt
there
and
in a
maybe we'll think
peripheral.
about it.
Exactly.
All right, got to leave it there. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it.